Okay, let's talk about your ACT personal plan of action. If you have your handout, we're going to go over this side first. If not, you can just copy down these columns on a sheet of paper. You want to articulate what your plan is so you don't leave anything up in the air. First thing to consider is bedtime. I like students taking the test in June and July because it's the summertime. They're generally more rested. But if it's during the school year, think about your bedtime. You got to remember sleep is delayed often by a day. So if you're testing on Saturday, the sleep you get on Thursday, what time you go to bed on Thursday will affect you as much or more on Saturday than it does on Friday. So really, you want to look at least a 1 week sleep cycle when you're trying to get 7 to 8 hours a night. So write down your bedtime when you need to get in bed with your phone down, TV off, computer off, where you're laying down in the dark going to sleep. And when you get to sleep, you got to think, well, what time I need to get up? What time do you need to get up for the ACT so you can eat breakfast, get your supplies so you're not nervous, and get to the test on time without rushing to avoid stress? You do need to eat a good, healthy breakfast. That's essential. Your body is burning calories if you're doing your best testing. So think about how long you need to be awake. And think about how far you are from the testing center. How long is it going to take you to drive there? So write down a time you need to wake up. Okay, eating is important. If you're an athlete, you may be used to carving up before a big game. You need to think about it in a similar way, except you're not doing carbs. You're doing protein and healthy fruits and vegetables. Ideally, the students who are getting a good sleep cycle, as we talked about, and feeding their body good fuels are going to be better prepared. If that's not you, at least try to eat healthy the night or two before so that you're not getting some energy drain on the day of the test. Don't eat something with heavy peppers and spices that's going to mess with your body on the day of the test. Don't go completely unusual in the morning of and go to the local Cracker Barrel and have Uncle Johnny's morning sunshine breakfast, whatever it's called. Have something healthy. Think protein, think vegetables, think energy foods. Think about what you're going to wear. Do you need to dress for comfort, sweatpants, PJ type clothes, or do you need to dress nice, feel like you're dressed for success? Be sure to layer. You're not 100% sure what the room temperature will be, particularly if you're testing on a Saturday at a school. Their air conditioners may be on timers and not always function exactly like you want them to. So layer. Hats are at the discretion of the proctors. My experience is they'll often ask you to take them off, so keep that in mind. Avoid clothing that makes noise. So if you have a wallet on a chain, or if you have swishy pants, they're going to make noise every time you move, or squeaky shoes. Try to avoid those sort of clothing. You might want to wear clothing that's baggy, so you can put some things in your pocket, like your snacks, should you need to. Extra pencils, things that would go in your pocket easily. That's always a consideration. You got to take your social plan into effect. When you get to the testing center, if you're around people how is that going to affect you? Some people like to talk to get out that nervous energy. Others get a little freaked out and anxious when they talk to others. I have students that intentionally will test at other locations in the school they're zoned for because they want to be places where people don't know them. If that's you, great. Sign up for a testing center that's not where you normally test. If you are going to be around people do you need to talk to them? Do you need to avoid them? Your call. Okay, make sure you have all the following items to bring with you. You have your ID. Unless you're doing a state testing at your school, you'll need your admission ticket as well that you print from the ACT website. Bring a watch. A watch is essential for keeping track of time. You don't want to keep looking back and forth to the clock on the wall. Calculator, your main calculator, and a backup calculator, something that's cheap and solar powered. Extra batteries if your calculator uses batteries. Pencils, if you have your measurement pencil, bring that. And you want to bring your snack for the break. I recommend something with electrolytes, a mini Gatorade, a Propel water, a Powerade, a Pedialyte, and a Snickers bar, something similar. A little bit of sugar kick, a little bit of protein, something to really get you going. I would put all these in a pencil pouch or a pouch of some type and bring that with you. It's easy to keep track of everything so you know that you have it all. And finally, do not bring your cell phone or anything that makes noise. No watches that make noise, no watches that beep. If you have a tile on your keychain, Make sure you don't have that, so because you don't want it to beep during the test. Don't have your cell phone anywhere on you. Have it all the way turned off, ideally left in your car or somewhere else. So should you be doing any additional prep a day or two before the test? That has to do with what kind of vehicle you are metaphorically in. If you're someone who's going to gain comfort and confidence from doing a test a day or two before the actual ACT, by all means, do it. Odds are you're not going to learn anything new about yourself. You're just going to kind of refresh your strategies. If you haven't taken an ACT in a while, yeah, that's a really good idea to refresh a few days, a week before. But that doesn't. You can't cram for the ACT like you can other tests because you're not necessarily memorizing facts and figures. Know your formulas for the math. Know your rules for the English grammar. Beyond that, it's just practice so you feel comfortable in your timing. Let's talk about the English test first. First test, 75 questions, 45 minutes. It's the first test. You need to get out some anxiety. Practice some techniques, maybe palming, where you push your eyeballs in with your hands, lowers your blood pressure. Maybe putting your hands on the back of the seat and lifting your body up to kind of alleviate pressure. Deep breathing, something to get you focused. I know that's an issue for some. If you live in a college-educated area, that's going to help you a lot more because you're surrounded by college-educated people who speak properly. And so you can trust your speech a lot. Remember, ACT is not going to test your knowledge of the names of grammar. They're going to test, can you communicate properly? So you're going to bubble by passage. It means you're going to complete 15 questions and then bubble 15 questions. If you need to, you can skip grammar questions like comma questions, verb questions, and come back to them. But rhetorical skills questions you want to answer in the moment. You're going to read until you get to a question, then stop and answer that question. Figure out where you need to be, what your score is, and go ahead and mark that in target score. So if you want to get a 35, 36, you need to get at least 72 right. Closer you can get to 75, the better. The more likelihood you'll reach that goal. If you're going to shoot for a 29, you can miss 2 questions per passage generally and get there. If you're going to miss 3 questions per passage, that's putting you closer to 25 or 26. So just keep in mind how many you can miss as to where you want to be and write that number down. Plan for it. Understand that you can miss 1 or 2, so that means your confidence level doesn't have to drop if you're missing 1 or 2 per passage, if you know your goal. If you're using your watch as a stopwatch, you're going to set your minute hand on the 3. You're going to have it so that it ends on the 12. That's a strategy for every test. So if you're keeping track, you can have about 9 minutes per passage, so you will know about where you need to be on the test if you pay attention to this chart. You could actually take a thumbtack and put a little scratch in a cheap watch, to keep track of where you should be, or a piece of tape to know about where you should be on the test. Okay, so math, second test, 60 questions in 60 minutes. Prepping for math is different than test day strategy. So prepping, you need to do all the cover your skills. On the strategy, you got to figure out what is your target score. So let's start with that. Your target score, if you're seeking to get a 36, you need to get 59 or 60 questions right. Some tests you can get 59, others that has 60. But you're going to try all 60 questions. You're going to do your best to get them all right. If you're seeking a 34, 54 to 59 questions, again, depending on the test. Here's a breakdown of test. So you can see on some tests, let's look at the 34 range. Some tests you can just miss 1 question, you drop to a 34. Other tests you can miss 4 questions, you still get a 34. So it depends on the test. So you want to figure out what is your score range. Let's say it's to get at least a 29 or a 30. And you want to answer 45 questions with confidence. You're trying 45 questions, you are double checking 45 questions, and your letter of the day guessing on 15 questions, and that's going to get you in the 29 range. So if you letter the day 15 questions, and let's say you get 3 of them statistically right, and if you got 48 of those questions right, that's going to get you probably a 30, maybe even a 31. Could get you a 29. So somewhere in that range, depends on which test it is, but you need to know your strategy and what you're up against. Because remember, the goal is not to finish the test, it's to maximize the number of correct answers. So when you're thinking through this strategy, you have now, later, never questions. Questions you answer in the moment, you answer now. Later questions are ones you say, I can do that, but I think it will take a while. That might be one of my skip questions. I'm going to skip it for now and come back. And never questions are ones that you don't know how to answer. And so you skip those, you letter the day, and move on. One consideration also while I'm here is thinking where you're going to start. Do you want to start at number one and move forward? If you're doing that, especially if you're trying to get a high score, you're going to try to go faster in the beginning. That could be a way that you make mistakes. Another strategy is to start with number 31, 31 through 60, and then go back to number one. That way you get theoretically the harder questions out of the way first. So how do you decide now, later, never? Do you understand the question, what it's asking for? If yes, great. Do you know how to solve it? Yes, great. Solve it, check your answer. You don't exactly know how to solve it. Do you have another strategy? Plug in the answers, plug in numbers, measurement pencil. Can you guess and check? If you can't do any of the strategies, you just quickly guess and move on. It's one of your never questions. It's one of the questions that's not part of the number you're counting to try to get correct. So math is 60 questions in 60 minutes, but it's not exactly 1 minute per question because there's a few questions that will take more than a minute. There's a few questions that'll probably only take 10 or 15 seconds. So you can gain time for the longer questions by doing the shorter questions faster. You just have to, again, know your capabilities based on the vehicle you're in. After the math test, you have a break. It's a 10-minute break. If you're late getting back from the break, you don't get that time back. You're just late to your reading test. So I would go to the restroom. While walking to the restroom, I would have my snack and I would jump around, get any energy out, break pencils if you need to, and then come back to the testing room. Do not use your cell phone. Don't check the time or the weather. You shouldn't have it on you. But if you're caught using your cell phone, you will be dismissed from the test. Now we're on reading. So the reading test, you got to consider where do you want to score on your reading test. And a lot of that consideration is what speed can you go? So if you are fast enough to read all 4 passages, 8.5 minutes per passage, that's about 8.25 minutes per passage. Will leave you 2 minutes for bubbling. If you're a faster, better bubbler, then you can gain a little more time on the reading, 15, 20 seconds if you needed it. If you can't, but let's say you're fast enough for 2.5 passages, then you're maxing your score out at around a 32. If you can only do 3 passages, and let's say by getting 11 minutes per passage, you can get them all correct, you're maxing your score out around 30. Okay, so you would try to get 32 to 35 questions correct. Let's say you did 30 and guessed on 10 and got 3 correct statistically based on that, maybe just 2. Then you could get around a 30. You're going to be in that range, 29 to 31. 2.5 passages will put you at around a max of 25, and 2 passages will put you around a max of 22. So based on your speed to get correct answers, where do you need to be? You got to remember there's different types of passages. You want to answer them in odd passages than even passages. So do your 1, 3, 2, 4. If you're planning to finish the test, that's the order I would suggest you go in, 1, 3, 2, 4. If you're not planning to finish the test and you're going to kill a passage, I advocate killing social studies, social science. It's the one that I find most students struggle with most. I think the questions are generally most challenging on social studies, social science. And my experience in working with a lot of students is those are the questions they generally miss. So you do have different strategies that we've talked about on some of the in our reading days. So you can read and answer. That's the strategy I would advocate if you had unlimited time. But if you are summarizing, you're going quickly, you might Google summary, or even if you're going slowly but can't remember what you read, you would Google summary. Mapping is a way to shortcut. So if you save the passage 2 or 4 to last and you're running close on time, you could definitely map that passage and save some time. You're going to figure out your target score, how many you're going to try to get correct, your personal order. If you're going to get rid of a passage, which one is it? And go into the test knowing that strategy and sticking to it don't change it. If you are using a watch, you're going to set your minute hand on the 25-minute mark to end on the hour. That gives you about 8.5 minutes per passage, but of course you would adjust these lines as necessary for your timing. So if you had 11 minutes, you get a little more time for each passage. So keep that in mind. Okay, now we're going to consider science, last passage. So think about where you need to be. So if you want a target score of 33 to 36, 39 to 40 questions. So you can look at the different tests and see how they've been scored. So sometimes you can get a 39 and get a 36, and occasionally get 38 questions right and get a 35. So it just depends on where you want to be. So if this is your range, though, 33 to 36, you're answering all 40 questions. You're not skipping any. If your range is 29 to 32, you could skip one passage. You could letter of the day, guess on up to 6 questions, which could be one passage altogether, and still get in that range of 29 to 32. If you're going to skip 1.5 to 2 passages, then your target score is a 25 to 28 at most. That's assuming you can get all the questions right on the ones you try, and letter of the day the rest, and statistically get a couple right. If you're going to skip 2 passages altogether, 22 to 24 is your max. If you're going to skip 3 passages, 20 to 21 is your max. So decide what you're capable of completing to get correct answers, and that should determine where your target score is. Remember, there's 3 types of passage: data questions, which we're going to walk in, look around the room sort of. There's charts and graphs. You're going to get to the questions quickly. You're going to have one passage, which is a hybrid, kind of an extended data passage, where they're really explaining a particular piece of research in depth. Research is when you have more than one experiment, experiments 1 and experiment 2, experiment study 1, study 2. And then conflicts is when you have a disagreement. Scientist 1 believes this, scientist 2 believes this. Student 1 believes this, student 2 believes this. This is hypothesis 1, hypothesis 2. It's like analyzing a sporting event you're unfamiliar with. So your main question is, when do you take conflicts? If you're a strong test taker with time to finish, conflicts first. Get it out of the way. It's the only passage that's really hard to shortcut. And then research or data next. Doesn't really matter which order. I would save a data passage until last, at least one. So if you are running short of time, those are ones you can shortcut easiest. So ones that's just a chart and graph. If you're a strong reader, I would also do conflicts first. That means reading is your strength. You've just finished the reading test, go immediately into science, and usually the conflicts passage is heavy reading. If you're a slow test taker, but with strong understanding, you really know what you're doing, I would still kill the conflicts. You're killing 6, 7, 8 questions then. But by doing so, you're really guaranteeing to get right the others. And so that still gives you a chance to get above a 30. If you're a weak test taker, I would just kill conflicts altogether. Not even try it. The slow test taker means you might get to conflicts, if you get the perfect test that falls into place, but I would still save it for last. So science, figure out what your strategy is going to be so you can go in and stick to that strategy. And you're going to set your minute hand on the 25-minute mark. Okay, hope this helps you figure out a little bit about how you get from point A to point B. And then next time you take the test after this one, you might change that plan to adjust your strategy. So good luck.